Hello and welcome to another episode of the djproject Criterion Collection. And with this episode, we'll talk about Spine 13, The Silence of the Lambs, directed by Jonathan Demme, 1990. Now, this is an example of old school Criterion. You see the banner right there. That's these were the initial DVD releases, and this is also the first out of print Criterion DVD. Well, actually, Grand Illusion was out of print, but this has been out of print for quite some time. In fact, there have been updated DVD releases. I mean, for starters, the initial DVD. This gets into kind of the technical side of home video viewing. There are two big things that made the Criterion Collection famous as far as Laserdiscs were concerned. First one was commentary tracks. They saw that there were multiple audio options, and they thought, well, why not have another audio option where somebody's just talking about the film, whether it be a scholar who knows every single frame of a film and can talk about it, or if they're still alive, the director himself can come in and share some thoughts. And so basically they did that. And also they were really big on presenting the films in their original aspect ratio, the relationship of the width to their height. In order to fit a image that's longer than a old SRT square TV, you do one or two things. You either fill the television with the image, but in the process you end up cropping it if it was shot widescreen, or if it was shot open matte, you just basically don't put the mats on there, and as a result, you may end up seeing lots of boom mic errors. A really good example of that is in The Princess Bride. If you've ever seen it open matte, there's when Count Rugen is about to go into the pit of despair, and you see him saying, "Wesley's got his strength back. I'm sending him on the machine tonight." You see a boom mic right over there. Normally that would be covered with the mats, but because the mats are not there in the full screen presentation, it's not there. So you can either do that, or you shrink the image. You basically fit the image onto your square TV, and then you have black bars on top and bottom, and that's called the letterbox. That's the letterbox presentation. And so they were the big things. Now, this is all assuming that you have a square TV. Now we've gotten to the point where widescreen televisions are the standard, and so with widescreen presentations, you just make sure that the image fits. It's all about fitting the image onto the TV, and so with that, it's described as anamorphic, which is basically means filling out the screen. So when you get into a situation like this, if you watch this DVD, it will not completely fill up your wide screen monitor, whether you watch it on through a television or through a computer. It will basically just, in order to maintain the shape, which is assuming that it's a square shape, actually what you'll see more black surrounding it. You obviously see the black on the top and the bottom, and then you see these wider ones on the sides. So it actually looks like you're really like looking at just a framed picture. Those actually, or you either keep it like that, or you have to find a way to stretch the image using your TV settings, if you're capable of doing this, to have it fill more of the screen. But of course, when you get to that point, you end up seeing more pixelations, and because you're trying to stretch this already small image into a much bigger size, and so you end up losing resolution and losing clarity when you do it that way. Me personally, I'm not bothered by that. I like being aware that what I'm looking at is within a frame. I'm not one. I mean, it's not that I don't like to be immersed into a film, but I also like the occasional reminder that what I'm looking at is something that's composed, something that has parameters, and so having a little bit of evidence of an edge doesn't bother me. So if there's some slight boxing in various forms, it doesn't really bother me. So, but all that said, there are obviously, this is, you can still get this title, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Criterion. In fact, the only reason why I got this is because someone I knew sold it, and he sold it fairly cheap. It's not a real high price. There are some other out of print Criterion titles that are much higher in price than others, and this one is not. It's not as high because the title was current and there are better presentations and so forth. So I got this at a fairly decent price, and so I was like, you know what, why not just add it on there? I like the film, and that's why I got it. I like the film, and there are some things that are unique to the Criterion issue that have not been ported over into later releases. I believe the commentary tracks have not been ported over onto the newer releases, and there's a few other little features that were there as well. So, and yes, this was originally a Criterion Laserdisc. That was the other thing. The only question mark I have as far as the presentation is that it was advertised that this is the other great thing about Criterion Collection, is that if the filmmakers are still alive, they were involved in the transfer process. They either approve it, they either supervise and or approve it. And this transfer at the time was approved by Jonathan Demme. And the later presentations, there's a big difference in the colors between the Criterion DVD and the later DVD releases, mostly by MGM. And I don't know if Jonathan Demme was involved in that, or if it was just a situation where the technology was limited as far as what you can do with transfers. So I'm not entirely sure what is considered like a definitive look and nothing. And I guess I can always dig into that and really see like what's there. So that's mainly my only concern. But I am making a mountain out of a molehill. This is a film that is great to watch. It's very entertaining, and also it's a film that works wonderfully from the standpoint of craft. This is the third film that, now that we know what the nominees are for this year, so everybody's talking about the Oscars, and this is definitely a film that embodies Oscars. This is the third film where it won all 5 of the top categories for film. It won Best Picture, it won Best Actress to Jodie Foster, it won Best Actor to Anthony Hopkins, it won Best Director to Jonathan Demme, and it won Best Writing to Ted Talley and his adaptation of the Thomas Harris novel. So really, if you want to see a film that, like, if you want to see, great writing, great direction, great performances, that is your go-to film. Even if you don't like the thriller genre, the crime thriller genre, it's there, and it's gotten I think deservedly so. It's gotten the status of being one of the most important crime thriller films. So if you want a genre definer, even though crime thrillers have been around for a long time. In fact, the very next episode is going to cover the prototype of the crime thriller. It still was able to add a few things, was able to do a few things, and it's one of those films where it's still felt in other films. Basically, it's the kind of film where other films after it owe something, to it, especially the films that have come out after The Silence of the Lambs. Well, duh. I mean, anything that comes after, so forth. But certainly, so yeah, it's a it's a genre defining film. It's a great film as far as entertainment, and really pulls you in. It's got great performances. I mean, again, it won Best Actress and Best Actor. And in fact, the thing that people love pointing out as far as the Best Actor win is that Anthony Hopkins is only there for about 20 minutes in the entire thing, and the film is what, almost 2 hours, so so not even barely a quarter of the film is has Anthony Hopkins in it. But there's a reason why he got the Best Actor awards, because, and this is especially the case if you've seen this, and I'm assuming that everybody has seen this film. If you haven't, just go right away. Just stop this right now. If you haven't seen it, stop this right now. Go see it. It's well worth your time. But anyone who has seen this film knows how it really kind of gets under your skin. His performance of Hannibal Lecter. Now, admittedly, as of this day, I have not seen Manhunter, so I can't say. I know there are strong opinions about which Hannibal Lecter is better. Was it Anthony Hopkins or Brian Cox's? So I really can't say. But I suspect it's going to be a similar heated debate with the Joker when you compare Jack Nicholson in Tim Burton's Batman and Heath Ledger in Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. I think that they're both very strong performances that work within their own worlds. And Michael Mann had a particular idea of what to do with the Hannibal character, and also it's based on a different novel too. Although Red Dragon was eventually made later on that used Anthony Hopkins, and that I have seen. I have seen Red Dragon. I have not seen the hilarious Hannibal, but I know what makes it hilarious, and said in that sort of snarky, ironic hipster way. Oh yeah, it's a hilarious film. Anyways, so anyway, back to comparative force. I think that they're both. I would, if I were to see Manhunter, I would feel that they were more or less equal performances. That they were both very strong and very right for their particular worlds. Manhunter is not this. I mean, comparing Manhunter to The Silence of the Lambs is a bit unfair, because it's well, first off it's sourced from two different novels, but the other is that I think there were different ideas about what was considered important on the part of both the writer and the director. So yeah, I think that's going to be the case. But anyways, Anthony Hopkins' performance is just really chilling, and especially his signature delivery of. Let's see if I can. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it's one of those things that just sticks. A census checker tried to interview me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. I mean, even doing that is just ugh. Just very unnerving, and it's still very unnerving. And I think what makes it great is that you really. This is one of those films where you really do feel like you're along for the ride with Clarice Starling. I mean, if you want to know an example of what is meant by a experiencing film viscerally or vicariously living somebody else's life or adventures. I mean, that's a great example of that kind of filmmaking, because because from the first moment you really are there with Clarice, as she's as she's at the FBI Academy, and doing her training, and then gets pulled into this assignment where she inadvertently helps in this investigation of finding Buffalo Bill, or James Gumb. And you see her just dealing with all of these things, and the challenges and the obstacles, and you really feel it from beginning to end. And that is what good writing does. And this is what good direction does, and this is what good performance is. I mean, everything works together so well with this film, and no wonder it gets awarded. I mean, going back to the Academy Awards, I don't put too much stock in the Academy Awards. This is how I look at it. I look at it as two things. One, it's an industry. The Academy Awards is an excuse for the industry to congratulate itself. That's really what it is. It's no different than if you have a car salesman convention and you win a best award there. That's really what that is. It's the industry congratulating itself. And so that means that there's always going to be imbalances and injustices and snubs and all kinds of other stuff. So it's ever going to be there. So that's why I don't put too much stock. But then it leads into the second thing, which is this is the closest that cinephiles and film lovers get to acting like everybody else during a playoff season. Just all the excitement and buzz that goes in during the playoff season. This is what cinephiles go through in looking at the Academy Awards and also in the Golden Globes. And then I would say the seasoned ones would make a big deal out of the 3 major European film festivals: Berlin, Venice, and Cannes. So, and those ones I put a little bit more stock into, because those tend to be more about merit. There can be some politicking about, but it's not as obvious in the history of the Academy Awards. But anyways, all that said, the fact that the Academy did recognize this as top form is one of those few examples of where it was all warranted. It was all well deserved. I forget at the moment who was on the nominee list for each category, but I really think that even if one craft may have done it better in terms of craft, but if you really think of it, but this is one of those cases where you can have the best script in town, but you can have lousy performances, or the direction can just be abysmal, or maybe not abysmal, but certainly like subpar. And even if you could rank one performance better than another, but it's the fact that all of them work together. That's the great thing. It's not just one particular thing. I mean, yes, people talk about Anthony Hopkins' performances, but really it's everybody. It wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have worked without his performance, but it also wouldn't have worked without Jodie Foster. It wouldn't have worked without Jonathan Demme. It wouldn't have worked without Ted Talley adapting Thomas Harris's book. I mean, everything worked together so well. And it's, any kind of accolades and praise that it gets and that it continues to get is well deserved. And the fact that people look to this, and I would say that I think people look to this not just as an entertaining film, but I think they also look to it as an example of, this is what I have to measure up to. This is a good standard. If my film can do something like this, not necessarily, if you're certainly making a crime thriller, that will definitely be a good standard. But even if you're just making a film that's just a straight drama, no thriller element at all, if you're just looking at that as like, this is what I have to measure up to, this is what I have to go for, I think we'll see more good films than bad films. And I think this is the problem with films nowadays, is that I feel like nobody is measuring up to a standard, or our standards are so low. They're so low that it's like, why even bother? Why try? Or why try to do better? I mean, let's just settle for the middle ground, and then that's it. But I think if we hold ourselves to higher standards, I think as a result, we'll have better film experiences than we do now. So yeah. I mean, this is a film that, again, it's been around for over 20 years. It's fairly well known. I gave you one line. There's plenty of others. There's plenty of other little moments. I will say that there is something about, I don't think this started it, but I've noticed this sort of trend that villains tend to have very cool soundtracks. They tend to have very cool music for them. Like in the case of Buffalo Bill or Jamie Gumb, which that's how I've described Plinkett to people. It's like, imagine if Jamie Gumb, instead of having, well, in addition to having women in the basement, it puts the lotion on its skin like it's told. In addition to doing that, he also does reviews, does movie reviews. Because his voice does sound very much like Jamie Gumb. It's also achieved in sort of the same way. I think the way he talks is very much like the way Plinkett talks. It's like, hello, Mr. Plinkett. I mean, that's basically how you do the voice. Really, it's like, who wants a pizza roll? Email me if you want a pizza roll. Post a comment on this web zone if you want a pizza roll. And no, I'm not going to give you a pizza roll because, one, that would be kind of an unofficial trademark infringement, and two, I do not like pizza rolls. So you'll never hear me ask Plinkett for a pizza roll. Anyways, besides, he wants certified mail. Expensive bastard. Anyways, but yeah, James Gumb has these really cool soundtrack moments. I mean, when you first see him, Colin Newman's Alone plays during his dance. Is Lazarus's Goodbye Horses. I'm probably botching the project name, sorry. And then in the final standoff was The Fall's Hip Priest, which actually, if you listen to the entire song, there is this tension, but lyrically it has nothing to do with what he does, except maybe just I don't know, but I mean, it works. I mean, it's not incongruence or anything. It's just what you think the song might be. And when you realize that it was used in that scene, you thought, okay, I know why musically it works, but anyways, the point of all this is that he has really cool soundtracks, and they're usually 80s post-punk UK groups. So I think, and I don't mind that, but I just find that amusing that tends to define the villains. They listen to The Wire, they listen to Joy Division, they listen to Susie and the Banshees. So I mean, there's worse things you could be listening to. I'm sure at some point I would love to see a villain that listens to. I'm sure that is the case. Really, villains are just listening to the top 40 stations. That's mostly what's on the air right now. This is a very interesting rambling, but I mean, again, like, what else can you really say about The Silence of the Lambs? I mean, this is definitely, again, this is one of those things where, yeah, I seem to have these films that. Don't worry, there are plenty of films where I may have to talk a lot about it because not a lot of people know about it, but this is very well known. Everybody knows about it, more or less. Again, well, if you're still watching this, you've already seen it, so I don't need to remind you. So I don't even really need to go for a recommendation. But to reiterate, it is an example of a great film, especially from the standpoint of craft. If you want to see what elements elements at their top and elements all working together, because it's not enough just to have a good writing. You need to have everything work together. Everything has to be at the top and working with each other in order to really make it something. Because a film, what it is, a film is comprised of many different parts, and when added together, they form something greater than its sum. And that's what I feel that the Silence of the Lambs does. It's you can pick out the individual pieces, but in the end, when it's all of it added up to make this film, and it makes it's entertaining, it's exciting, it's visceral. You really feel you're along for the ride, and I think what's really interesting is that even if you know like all the plot points and all the steps that lead up to it, there's still something quite surprising. Like there's still something about it that kind of throws you off. Like, how was that done again? Or how do they? Oh, okay, yeah, that's it. And that's also a good mark. So, yeah. What more can I say? Anyway, so that was The Silence of the Lambs. And until next time, take care.